This is another in my series of videos counting down to the end of the world on December 21st, 2012, as predicted by many. That something opportune has happened. A man named Mr. Sheridan has come out, or has come to my attention. What happens to me is the next thing I need to see just appears on my screen. And his field is the psychopath. And I've known about psychopaths since 1977. I've done a few videos about them, but I haven't really pushed it into people's faces. But when I was working for consulting companies, one of our endeavors was to teach people that to solve a problem, you have to find what's called the real why. Why is this happening? And underneath the excuses and justifications and lying, cheating, stealing, you find the real reason why something's happening. And when you do that, the next phrase is, it opens a door to handling it. Now that we have the real why, it opens a door to handling it. And the problem of planet Earth is so complex. If you wanted to state the problem, you'd have to use mathematical symbols like problems times 10 to the 63rd power or something to get a number for it. But the real why has been pointed out, and it opens the door to handling all of those problems. And the real why is the animal, the psychopath. And psychopaths comprise about 2.5% of the population on planet Earth, and they are able to weaken or control about 20% of the population. And those people, the 20%, are indirect sources of trouble because they are under suppression by a psychotic person and are unable to perform consistently. We have a word for this, which is a psychopath, so it does exist. They make movies about them. But the actual serial killer, psychopath, Hannibal Lecter types are very rare in the society. And the real damage is caused by approximately 200,000 worldwide who have worked their way into governments, religions, and corporations and wreak havoc on the rest of us. And this is the real why for the unethical behavior of governments, corporations, which are a legal fiction or legal person, which is immune to having the personal property of the members taken as payment for crimes done by the corporation. Which is another issue which I think needs to end on this planet, so we can get some more legal control over assorted insanities. and the insanity of the major religions, mostly the big one is the Vatican and their Catholic religion. Although the people wanting to be Muslim empire are not having a lot of fun either. These people are scattered throughout society in different sizes, from minuscule to gigantic. And the reason for them is they are people who have been so overwhelmed by evil in their past lives that they have become it. It's not genetic. It's not environmental. It's a totally caved-in being who incarnates on this planet and sees everyone else as an enemy, because he's been so overwhelmed by enemies that the enemy has become quotation marks everywhere and everyone. So they come at random into families and grow up into psychopaths, and they learn how to manipulate the normals. So with a simple solution, finding the real why, it's not necessary to discuss reptilians or zeta reticulans or any outside alien source. If we could just locate and identify the local psychopaths, the world would be mostly healed of the insanities of crime, war, infidelity, pedophilia, embezzlement, inconstant lovers, criminal corporations and criminal governments, the Adolf Hitlers, the Stalins, the genocide people in Africa. All of that is perpetrated by psychopaths. So I always hoped this would come out. I was going to bring it out. I have brought it out in a couple of videos, but I haven't really pushed it. But this is what is wrong. And it's not taught in our society that these people walk among us and are treated normally. They are enemies of the normal people, and they've learned to manipulate, and I might add, completely ruthlessly, normal people to their own ends with no mercy. And I have been in counseling since '77, and I noticed that people in general not wanting to confront that amount of evil usually make excuses for them, or he's just someone who had a lot of problems in childhood, so needs to be forgiven for that. That is a complete lie. They use that to gain sympathy and excuses for the moments when they get caught in a lie, and they would look really bad unless they have a justification for it, which they always do. There are other names for this kind of behavior. One of them is Can't remember it now. It's a kind of liar who just lies immediately and quickly and perfectly. Catching the normal person unawares because they don't know that they're dealing with a psychopath. So they're willing to accept their explanation. Now, these people will never come in for treatment or admit what they are doing. So our solution at present is to identify and isolate them, which may sound harsh, but the reason it sounds harsh is they have themselves promoted this philosophy of the New Agey forgiveness, soft pedaling insanity. So we wouldn't treat them harshly. The concept of original sin is 50% based on the fact that these people exist. They came in here with a problem, unresolved problem from previous past lives, and they're dramatizing it on you and me and everyone. From the bad teacher all the way up to Bernanke and Tony Blair and people who have that kind of power. And the 99% people are right. Actually, it's 97.5% of us who are not psychopathic are being controlled, manipulated, and boxed up by the 2.5% who are psychopathic. And in a way, you could say the reptilians, in quotation mark, is a metaphor for these people. Whether there are actual green reptilians running around somewhere in military bases could be a separate issue from this. The reptilians running around the military bases are actually doing less damage per capita than the psychopath who is hired at your business and is damaging the emotional health of your staff and probably your sales and profit margins. And then they move on. One of my ideal scenes for the future would be if someone is found out to be a psychopath, they go on a government list. So when they come in and apply for a job at your place, you go, oh, you're a psychopath, no thanks. Like someone with a criminal record. Do you have a criminal record? No. Okay, we'll hire you. Do you have a criminal record? Yes. Okay, then it's up to you as a boss whether you want to give them a chance or not. I could have a registry for them, like the pedophile lists that are now starting, and you would probably find these people on both lists, actually. The thing that damages them the most is losing their employment. So if you want to do anything about one, you can assist him to lose his job. And they have been merciless with us, so I think it's okay for us to be merciless with them since they can't be fixed, and since they wouldn't show up for therapy. That's their own choice, so they have to be responsible for their own condition and be separated out from society. Like you would, and as we have done and do with people with incurable contagious diseases. It's one of the choices we've made. Well, it's sorry, it's too bad. You're contagious, deadly, and incurable. And we can't have you running around infecting people. For example, the kind of things that we have to experience in our world because of psychopaths. The age of consent where I live for sex with young people, I think it's 14 now. 14, 16. I'm 65, so I could have a 14-year-old girlfriend and it would be legal. I don't think that law would have been passed by the 14-year-old girl's father, saying it's okay if that old white-haired old man is having sex with my 14-year-old daughter. This law was proposed by psychopaths in a legislature and voted yes by psychopaths in a legislature who want to be having sex with 14-year-old girls and boys. My daughter's 35. Her boyfriends look like big, huge wrestlers, and they're afraid of me because I still give them the look. You are not good enough for my daughter. And they're all 18 inches taller than me and outweigh me by 100 pounds, but they're still afraid of dad vibes because it's not survival for the human race to have 65-year-old men having sex with 14-year-old girls and screwing up their future as wives and mothers and people who discover love and get married and have children and try to play that game. But the psychopath is full of testosterone and selfishness and doesn't see anything wrong with it. The genocides in Africa are perpetrated by genocidal presidents who see nothing wrong with butchering hundreds of thousands to millions of people. And the reason they're able to do that is they were able to buy ammunition and guns and rocket launchers and tanks from psychopathic presidents of companies that manufacture arms. And the reason they're able to sell arms to these third world countries is psychopaths in the governments have okayed this. I saw a picture of two Somali pirates, and they had, let's say, rifles with rocket launchers on them, with rockets on the tip, and they were posing, holding an English company couple captive. And I thought two things. I thought, these guys look like dumb fucks. And how come these two dumb fucks are able to have a super rifle with a rocket launcher and I'm not allowed to have a pistol? What's with that? Seems wrong somehow. All of that is psychopathy. If the governments of the world said we are not allowing our arms manufacturers to sell arms to third world countries that are having political problems, we'd have the kind of world that the normal people assume we are working towards. So again, the real why is a psychopath in the government, a psychopath in the arms business, psychopath in the African government, psychopath in Western governments okaying the sale of these things. And it's not even for the money, it's for the death of these people. Psychopaths are deadly afraid of others. They think others are going to come and get them. So the more people that are dead, the safer the psychopath feels. And For example, the Vatican bought the Encyclopedia Britannica in 1898. Business investment, I guess. Also control of information. You don't see the Catholic Church as a large unit out on the planet disseminating spiritual information, providing free food for the poor, counseling married couples so that the marriages stay together, having effective programs for the children so they stay off drugs. With all the money they're supposed to have, you think a church doesn't need to have a profit? They need to be disseminating spirituality and the living word of Jesus Christ. And are they doing that? No. They also own the Coca-Cola Company. Coca-Cola Company, I saw the president of the Coca-Cola Company once speaking about part of their plan to acquire most of the freshwater rights that they could get their hands on and use it to make their lines of soft drinks. But the soft drinks is only a cover for the fact that they own the fresh water, and if you want to drink, you're going to have to pay them. Again, good corporate business. Not very spiritual. And I was at a Catholic church when I was very young, and I was sexually molested there, and I didn't appreciate that. There have been many, actually, too many to mention, too many to talk about, lawsuits against the Catholic Church for their priests. I guess we should keep the language clean, but I don't want to. Having sex with the older boys and young boys and women who come in, young girls who come in, confession. This would be expected anywhere in a very, very small percentage, but it's so prevalent there. The reason again being psychopaths on the job rather than normal people. So all of that misery. In Canada, in the East, in the olden days, the Catholic Church used to ask families to give one of their children to the church so that child could become a priest. But the way that child was begotten was the child was the son of the local priest and your wife. That's very destructive of families to be doing that. But great for the priest. I don't know how many women would he have done that with? And priests are not supposed to be celibate, but in this case, this special case, well, we're producing children for the church, so it's okay. This is psychopathic justifications. Also, the tremendous amount of mental and physical abuse of the children of the native population in Canada at the hands of the religious boarding schools. Was part of the genocide, part of the horrific scene here, which is not that old, because I have acquaintances who went through that. They're still alive, and they never had a life. They're still reeling from that. And just to make things a little more real, I went to the Greater Vancouver Native Cultural event here 2 years ago, and for the first time I heard the word colonization used by them at a lecture. They are dealing with the fact that they were colonized by the British and the French, and they still are. But it's never mentioned in polite company. But they were given smallpox infected blankets, just like in the United States, for example. The children were taken away from them, sent to boarding schools so they couldn't learn the language, couldn't learn the drumming, couldn't learn their culture, in an effort to destroy them. This is psychopathic behavior. The Indians invited the white people into Canada. There was never a war fought. They said, let them come in, they helped them. And then they were stabbed in the back. Which is the way the world was in the colonial times, from 1600 to maybe 1850. People from Europe using their superior technology of sailing, galleons, compasses, and gun firepower, went out and conquered the world and stole the wealth of the world and brought gold and drugs back to Europe, which again is getting somebody hooked on drugs is business, but it's psychopathic business. It's conscious survival to be doing that. And following the trail of the Illuminati families, a lot of their money is drug money from those days. We're bringing opium out of the Far East to Europe by the shipload. About 10-20 days ago, I saw a video on YouTube of Mike Rinder of the Church of Scientology and somebody else like him. And Mike Rinder is the guy who does all the interviews about Scientology when the people are asking how come Scientology is so completely not so now. And he was forced to lie about it. And people said, we know you're lying, you sack of shit. What's with that? And he would have to stare blank-eyed at the camera. There was an interview with him and somebody else. They were sitting on a little dock, fishing and drinking beer, describing the behavior of David Miscavige, and the behavior was psychotic. And I know they know darn well he's a psychopath. They're trained in this, and they know. So I don't know who or what or why that appeared, but if people were asking what's wrong with the Church of Scientology, it's being led by a psychopath, and the staff are putting up with it, which they shouldn't be. And David Miscavige is working under an even bigger psychopath in the background. So you don't have to think about that anymore. Yes, it is like that. And like all organizations, they're ripe for infiltration by psychopaths. And it is now not what it's supposed to be. So don't worry about it anymore. Don't waste a minute on it. Don't waste time making videos about it or looking at videos about it or thinking about it. Another area about is the privately owned Federal Reserve Bank and faces we see involved with that. All the questions that have been raised over the last 24 months about the legitimacy of the Federal Reserve, which was created in a midnight meeting on Jekyll Island just after the turn of the last century by this same big bankers who were controlling Wall Street. People were called the money trust, were upset about it. They said, well, let's just morph into this federal bank to get out from under the black PR of being the big six rich people in the country. And they made the federal government a partner in that, but it's never been audited, and nothing's been done. But we see the same faces on television always basically saying everything's fine, there's nothing wrong, you don't need to worry, which is the professional big league psychopath. And their power on that level is more blackmail, death threats, financial ruin, to shut you up, which is a criminal society, but at a deeper level of it, it's a psychotic society, or run by psychotics. And over the last few thousand years, we begin to think this is the way it is on planet Earth. There's murder and rape, and the children are being molested, and there's war and famine and big league money thefts and shortages of food, school systems declining. And I hope that the change that is talked about in our historical documents is more practical than we think it might have been, and this kind of public awareness of this kind of problem is one of the things that will come out and change the world. For example, the employment tests for people applying for jobs could not include tests to find out if you're a psychopath. When I was in management consulting, one of the things we were looking for was the company Psychopath or Psychopaths. And one of the quickest ways to detect them was you ask the owner to put a shoebox in a drawer in his desk and say every time somebody comes in that door and tells you about a problem or dumps a problem on you, write his name down and throw it in the box. And after a month, look at the box, see whose name comes up the most. This is the person trying to upset you rather than handling the problems, which is what people are paid to do, is to handle problems on the job. And we had a companion company who had a way to locate psychopaths with a not too complicated series of tests. And that's all they do, is look at your staff and locate the crazy people for you. And generally the owner doesn't believe it, and so, okay, well, now that we've identified this person, why don't you start investigating their behavior and production aspects and interview other people's opinion about the interactions with them and say what you think. And very often during the investigation, that person would leave the company causing as much damage as possible and just bolt before they were discovered. Here's some stuff from London, 1953. Mid-November. Such people would be better understood if I called them merchants of fear. The most degraded control operation of which the body is capable is utilized by these people for their sole method of getting on in the world. They have lost all ability themselves to create. They cannot work themselves. They must either amass money, which is never to be spent, or must prevent others from amassing money. They produce nothing. They must steal one way or another, and then devaluate whatever they obtain. They speak very sternly of honesty or ethics and put on a formidable front of complete legality. They are impartial, which is to say they are incapable of decision, but ride continually on maybe. They get in contact quite easily with courts, for courts are, sad to say, more or less of this psychotic disposition themselves. Probably a society could be cleared and allowed to bloom if these people were simply rounded up and removed from contagion with the remaining populace, for they are not numerous. Yet they are in sufficient number that it is doubtful if your people who are more seriously badly off have not had at least one in their past. This is particularly true of the hard-pressed person that he has been victimized by one of these merchants of fear. Such people are themselves a continuous maybe, and therefore will be found very easily in a person's memory. It should be remembered that these people have invited many crimes against them. The merchant of fear specializes in being offended themselves, and even though the acts against them are slight, these have become magnified until such people occupy a major role in the lives of people who've been exposed to them. The psychotic personality is at work with his operation 24 hours a day, ceaselessly, relentlessly, calculatingly, with full knowingness. The aberrated personality continues his onslaught against those around him. And for all of the people that I met who said, "Oh, the poor dear, he's had a hard life," let me read that again. The psychotic personality is at work with his operation 24 hours a day, ceaselessly, relentlessly, calculatingly, with full knowingness. The psychotic personality continues his onslaught against those around him. The entire computation of this aberrated personality is that he is worthless. He knows himself to be completely worthless. One might feel a little pity if the harm were not so great, for there is nothing more terrible than this knowledge. A psychotic personality feels he cannot succeed unless he drives others away from him with fear, preferably with terror. He assumes aspects of ugliness in matters of clothing. He is quite prone to ugliness. Very often this personality does not bathe. His breath is very often foul. His feet become odorous. The endocrine system has failed one way or another. The person has considerable bowel trouble. In case you err and try to apply this classification too widely to other people, there is one definite characteristic you must not overlook. This characteristic makes the difference between the psychotic personality and run-of-the-mill human beings. The secrecy computation is the clue. The best index to a secrecy computation is a refusal to get psychiatric help. Because of this factor of the secrecy computation, and for no other factor, it chances to follow that the psychotic personality can be known by its refusal to have any help of any kind. Or he accepts help very covertly and will not permit it to have any effect on him. He has all manner of excuses for this, such as altitude above the psychiatrist. But in any way, shape, or form, he escapes help. Men in the field of the arts are very often victimized by these psychotic personalities. The merchant of fear communicates rapidly with any area which contains a great deal of admiration. Since the person is actually incapable of decision, this is a mechanical closure and communication. The presence of admiration around anyone else begins to dissolve some of the completely crazy vibes of the merchant of fear. And this finds him very close to the source. Orchestra leaders, painters, writers are always having the terrible misfortune of communicating with such personalities. There is hardly a man of art or letters who does not bear on him the scar of having associated with a merchant of fear, for these are vampire personalities. They are themselves so starved of admiration and of sensation that they drink out of others around them any possible drop of admiration in any form. Where a woman becomes a merchant of fear, sexual starvation is continually attempting satiation, and all the while the merchant of fear will protest and to all visible signs follow a life of complete celibacy. While it is not my purpose here to revile, I wish to impress upon people that the merchant of fear is extremely dangerous, both to creative impulses and sanity. One could say airily, why don't we just fix these people, since they are so few? But these people will never present themselves for psychiatric help, and will discourage anyone else from having any. A solution probably does not lie in the field of psychiatry. The society at large is so accustomed to association with material things, and the merchant of fear so closely approximates some of the characteristics of material things. The maybe, for instance, that the public commonly misassigns strength to such aberrated personalities and thinks of them as strong people or as wise people. They are neither strong nor wise, and before an even indifferently forceful attack quickly capitulate. They live their whole lives in terror of attack. A person should not err in thinking that these people always present a repulsive appearance. Repulsive conduct precedes a repulsive appearance. At first they operate only mentally in trying to make everyone afraid. Then it begins to show up more and more in their body and finally will demonstrate itself in their personal appearance. Thus one can mark the state of decay of these personalities. You should understand that the psychotic personality has not become a psychotic personality by being confronted by another psychotic personality. You are not getting here the pattern of stimulus response. You are getting the decay of a human spirit to complete inactivity, so the entire modus operandi becomes that of the body itself. And the body, in the case of the psychotic personality, which itself is too deteriorated or exhausted to work. Not all bodies becoming so exhausted and unable to work turn into psychotic personalities. But the psychotic personality is born entirely out of the decline of the individual to produce. When the individual really recognizes his utter worthlessness to the society, he becomes a psychotic personality. Many people who cannot work physically turn to other lines of progress. They are getting on one way or another. The aberrative personality is so badly off that he can lead only a parasitic existence. You will understand then that people going downhill do not immediately and automatically become psychotic personalities. In our definition here as used, people become aberrative personalities out of a malevolence which insists on a high level of survival without the production of anything. Page 2. The true psychotic is not always found in an institution. Behind those gray walls you mainly discover his victims. The true psychotic is one who causes hysteria, apathy, misconceptions, and the reactions of stress in others. That is the identity of the being that is the source of psychosis. He is, by and large, rather unconfrontable as a being, talking in the wildest generalities. He sounds quite sane unless you listen to him closely. Then it will be found that the reasons he gives do not quite make sense, but are all directed toward the necessity of smashing or brutalizing anyone and everyone or selected groups or material objects. The actual psychotic is covertly or overtly destructive of anything the rest of us consider good or decent or worthwhile. Sometimes such a being is, quote, successful in life, but the end result of his activities are what you would expect: total smash. Some notable examples were Hitler and Napoleon. Not even historians are quite brave enough to state that these two beings were totally, completely, and incomprehensibly separated from reality and acted without good cause, reason, or justification, other than an obsession to destroy, ruin, and bring misery to millions. How Napoleon, for instance, justified beginning an attack on Russia too late in the year for his troops to operate there at all is very hard to see. Why Hitler had to destroy the Jewish people in Germany as a necessary act in prosecuting his war against the world outside of Germany has no other answer other than madness. The true psychotic brings about an hysterical, apathetic, or deranged mental condition in others. He or she does it for, quote, many good reasons, does it for no reason at all, or doesn't even notice he's doing it. The true psychotic worships destruction and abhors reasonable, decent, or helpful actions. Although history affords us innumerable examples, they are so common in the society around us that one does not have to go into a study of mass murderers to find them. The phenomenon is by no means rare, and at the absolute minimum is 2.5% of the population. This individual fills the institutions with victims, the hospitals with sick, and the graveyards with the dead. The statistics of psychosis are not going to lessen in the society unless this type of personality is completely isolated and understood. The first problem one confronts in identifying a true psychotic is that anyone detecting in himself or herself some destructive urge is likely to believe that he or she is psychotic. This is definitely not the case. One of the primary characteristics of the true psychotic is total lack of introspection, a total irresponsibility to the pain or suffering of others, coupled with a logic which explains it all away, but uses reasons which are not sensible to any of the rest of us. An actual psychotic never for a moment suspects his madness. You and I have often wondered about our own sanity, particularly since nobody could define it, but a psychotic never does. Further, he would not help his fellow man if his own life depended on it. He would rather perish. This being is difficult to spot because he does not ordinarily fling himself about and make scenes. He is often entirely emotionless, completely cold-blooded, and apparently perfectly controlled. The control, however, is only apparent, as this being is in the grip of a force far more powerful than himself, and is a thoroughly controlled being. He or she must destroy and must not help or assist in any way. Such a person is almost impossible to treat even when identified. They do not easily respond to therapy since their level of responsibility is too low to experience even hope or despair about themselves. Thus, they never assist anyone seeking to help them, and indeed are far more likely to turn on any benefactor than to permit assistance by them. And a little small ending note. And in the smaller world, when you see a cold, indifferent smile to the agony of another, you have seen an actual psychotic. And I do see with increasing regularity articles in the newspaper about psychotic politicians being caught and sent to jail. And these are mayors of towns, governors of states, and it's happening with increasing regularity, and their crimes are the crimes of psychotics, which are theft of money, sexual perversions, bad treatment of women, and leaving a path of destruction and lies, crime, corruption, hegemony. And I hope that this is part of the overused phrase, raising the vibration level of the planet, where that's not going to be allowed in the psychic space of the collective group of us. And it's coming out that this is occurring and they are being jailed for this. And we did have the large group of super CEOs over the last 10 years being caught, people stealing billions of dollars while their company's going under, and widows are losing their savings in stock, and see more and more of that happening. And it seems to be happening on a worldwide basis, but it's not being reported because they own the media. But they can't escape the psychic network. So I have tons more material in detail on this type of psychopath and psychopathic behavior and where it comes from, where it's going. But the main point for you is to become aware that our world is run by and controlled by psychopaths, and it has been so for some thousands of years. And even if there is an alien overlord or 2 or 6, they are working through local psychopaths who they employ to get the job done. So we can expose and eliminate the local psychopaths. All we'll be left to deal with is the practically more like 200 off-planet evil beings. And if you want to know where they are, you want to look at the 200 anonymous owners of the World Bank. There are 200 public owners and 200 anonymous owners. Who are the 200 anonymous owners of the World Bank? An interesting question for those who do that kind of digging. So I'm going to leave you with this for now. Take a look around you tomorrow. The psychopaths are easy to spot if you are looking for them. And they will see you spotting them.